Hello, everybody. Welcome to InvestAnswers TA Tuesdays. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite indicators, and that is RSI. So, as usual, let's jump right in. RSI stands for Relative Strength Index. And we're going to talk exactly what that is all about and how it works. But of course, in math, we trust. Now, it's important to remember as well that technical analysis, just as a reminder to everybody, it does not predict the future. It identifies patterns, period. However, the one we're tackling today, relative strength index, is my favorite. I do not enter any position or I don't get out of a position unless I basically consult with my RSI first. And I'll show you some configurations of how I run with it. So this will be a quick session for those of you who are very advanced in TA and those of you who are beginning, and everybody else in between. A relative strength index is used to assess price momentum, basically how quickly traders are bidding up the price of a stock or down. Now, the scale is typically 0 to 100. Now, if you are below 30, that typically indicates the asset is oversold. If it's above 70, it's overbought. That could mean time to buy or time to sell, but wait, there's an awful lot more to this than meets the eye. So let's jump in and look at stock, where I got a lot of questions today, and it has been very, very volatile. But the reason I'm going to talk about MicroStrategy, and we're going to look at the charts, and I'm going to show you exactly how I identify if something is completely oversold or overbought using a number of different ways. So hang to the end, but I want to make sure we bring everybody along from the very beginning. So this is my MicroStrategy chart. And you will see here, I have my relative strength chart below. So it's configured for 70. Whenever something is above 70, you'll get a pivot point or a bear flag, which means think about getting out. And if you look at that and how it compares to the actual point here, it's not a total bear flag. And as I mentioned in previous videos, I like RSI. It's great for identifying entry points. It's not perfect for identifying exits. So always bear that in mind. Somehow it's better at one than the other. Now, when it's above 70, it means overbought, which means it's expensive, which means it's likely it could turn down. Now, when it's under 30, that means it's oversold and it's likely it'll go back up. So if you look at the chart here, you look at the bull flags hitting when MicroStrategy was at about 640, and all the way down here. It went down to 540 that day when we were having a live Discord session. We jumped into that trade. And now it's kind of gone up all the way. But now for the first time in a long period of time, since the beginning of March, we see it's gone down to the oversold area again with this red line down here, which means it could be an opportunity, but we'll find out more. We'll analyze the chart live and we'll have a good look at it. The other thing is very important to note, and I want everybody to notice this as well. Trend lines, trend lines, trend lines. One of my first TA Tuesdays was about drawing trend lines and using the pitchfork and how critical that is. So for everybody out there, keep practicing your trend lines because you cannot play RSI without being an expert at drawing lines. So I just want you to all to bear that in mind. Now, the other thing to bear in mind as well, RSI can help identify uptrends versus downtrends. Now, the simple rule of thumb, again, there are always exceptions to every rule, but more or less, this works pretty well. You can actually use RSI to identify an uptrend in a stock better than you by looking at the actual chart. So the uptrend or bull market is when the RSI tends to remain in the 40 to 90 range. Remember, we had the 30, 70 area. This is the 40 to 90, with the 40 to 50 zone acting as support. And that's very important. We'll talk about that later because what happens is if you crash through support and you know where the support line is using RSI, it can be a very good indicator to get out of a trade. Now, the opposite is also true for the downtrend. So first one we just tackled was bullish. Now on the bearish side, it's when the RSI tends to stay between 10 and 60, with 50 to 60 acting as resistance. So remember up above, 40 to 50 is support, 50 to 60 resistance. And you've got to know which market you're in. And that's why it's very important. We'll draw some trend lines as well in a little bit. The other thing that I want to mention as well is it's very important to be aware of what I call fake outs. So a fake out is when it appears that something is about to break a trend, but it doesn't. Okay, so strong uptrends can last for months. So you think an RSI chart could be up, and staying up there, and you think, oh, it's above 70, so it's going to start selling off. Sometimes that's not the case. So beware of fake outs. And I'll talk in a subsequent video about what I call the secret line, magic line that I use to identify when a fake out is actually broken. The second thing is strong downward trends can last for weeks or months. Upward trends can last for months or hours or days, but typically things tend to fall faster than they go up. So always remember that as well. It's just a trading rule of thumb. Things tank quicker than they float up into the heavens. So beware of the fake out. Now, the other important thing to look at is divergence types. So this is where I'm probably going to lose a lot of people, but don't worry, because I'm going to explain it with graphics and I'm going to show you live examples. So there are different divergence types, and as you get deeper into all of this stuff, it'll make more and more sense. But when some people hear people hearing higher highs and lower lows, they just get confused. But don't get too bogged down with it. But I just want to walk through 4 different divergence types. One is when the price makes higher high and the RSI makes lower high. Remember, think divergence. They're both going in separate directions. Downtrend, lower highs and lower lows. Then you have the higher low in RSI and the lower low in divergence. And then you have when you create your dynamic trend line as well, and something breaks that trend line, you know something's breaking down. So I will talk about that as well. And remember, only ever consider shorting after it breaks through support. Otherwise, it can be very dangerous. Sometimes it's good to be patient. You might get a flag to alert you to enter or exit something, but wait. Don't just jump. Wait till you have a verification of an actual movement. Now here, real simple, how to execute divergence. And I'm going to walk through 2 examples very shortly. First of all, again, map those trend lines for your asset and your RSI. And when your asset breaks through resistance, it's a bullish sign. And when your asset breaks through support, it's a bearish sign. Well, let me show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So this is Shopify. Shopify right now, and I made this chart, was at $1,106. And if you look at the trend line for the price above in the top part, you can see I drew a trend line from the top to the bottom, and the trend is obviously down for Shopify. Now, if you look at the RSI down here as well, you can see the trend is up. So this is called a bullish divergence. And with this, it tells me it's a bullish sign, but you've got to wait. You got to wait for the price to break through this line here, because this is now acting as resistance. So basically, for that to happen, we need Shopify to go through back through 1120, 1130 or something like that to make that happen. Now let's look at what happens on the other side of the fence. Bearish divergence. This is Cardano, currently at $1.13 in this chart. And you can see here the trend is upwards for Cardano over time since the beginning of February. But if you look at the RSI trend line, it's downwards. And this is a bearish divergence. This is not good. So what you have here is this support line up above. If the price of Cardano breaks through that, that can be a very bearish signal that Cardano could tank. So bear that in mind. I know a lot of you are new to Cardano. I know a lot of you are very bullish on Cardano, more bullish than Ethereum. But you know my take on that, so I won't repeat more. But anyway, it's just important to look at that. And this is one I'll be monitoring very carefully. I have a very small position in Cardano. I'm looking to add, but I only add when it's at $1 or less. A buying opportunity could be coming if this chart proves to be true. Now, remember, as I said before, you can't rely on RSI charts in isolation, but they are a very good indicator as you go forward. Now, remember, charting tools, you got TradingView and you got TC2000. We're going to go through some TradingView charts live today. Others that may prefer Telechart 2000 can use that as well. And the assets and stocks we're going to look at Bitcoin, Snowflake, Baidu, Galaxy Digital, Illumina, Microstrategy, Tesla, Shopify, Cardano, and Invitae. All super interesting, all have different stories to tell based on RSI. So here, Very top, we have Bitcoin. Now, what Bitcoin tells us, looking at the chart here, this is the history of Bitcoin going back to beginning of Feb. And you can see the different flags here that exist. You've got your bull flags, with your kind of buy signs. For example, here, good buy sign, good buy sign. Now, what I typically like is to have at least one or two bull flags to identify that it is a real trend, and bear signs. Obviously, when things really spike up high on the RSI side, this went up to nearly 80. This was a very bearish sign. So you could have used this simple RSI alone to identify when Bitcoin was completely overbought at that 61,781 top. It nailed it perfectly. And then it tanked really fast. And I remember a lot of people got really skittish when it went all the way down to 52,000, thinking it was the end of the world. But again, it was completely overbought. It was just an abundance of very, very good news. So look at, then your next bear flag came in here, and it was around 59.6. It did some fall down a little bit and rose a bit again, and then tanked again. The sell indicators are not perfect for this, but the buy indicators are pretty strong. Right now, we see the relative strength index is coming down again for another bite. We just saw, notice we're looking at a 1 hour chart here. If we can go to a 2 hour chart, we can see the indicators are less, and sometimes it's better to zoom out just a little bit more to get that ratification. But I think Bitcoin, if it dips down anywhere near 52,000, it's a very good sign. But again, don't be faked out. So it's all over very, very, very positive here. And I think Bitcoin at this current level is a little bit oversold. Now let's look at Snowflake. Snowflake is one of the reasons why I wait on things like IPOs. You can see that this company has a pretty limited history, only going back to September 2020. But we are now below the IPO price. Let's zoom in a little bit and get a better feel for exactly what's going on here. Now, over the past couple of months, we saw a lot of buy indicators when, again, the RSI tanked. You didn't get the buy indicator here when it really did tank, but that was just a short-lived wick down. But this was a whole bunch of kind of oversoldness in the early March timeframe, but that also happened in conjunction with the overall market sell-off. Now, Snowflake is beneath that level, and now the bull flag is in, and the RSI is at the lowest level ever since the 22nd of Feb 2021. So this is something I'm going to be looking closely at and see exactly what's going to happen. But I do think the RSI is telling us, again, just in isolation, that Snowflake is very oversold. Baidu, another favorite of mine. This is one. Here you can see some interesting patterns and stories. It was completely oversold back on the 5th of March, as with the broader market sell-off, and it tanked even further. You see this other little red mark, it didn't create a bull flag. But on the 8th of March, 2021 was kind of the next bottom down to about 230. Now we're at 239, 238 in the post-market. Again, it's getting close to the level where we are very close to this RSI breaking through the 30. And if there is an early sell-off tomorrow morning down to that 235 level, 230 level, it might be worth a little flutter. Again, the future of this company is very bright because of their autonomous vehicle EV play, and of course, being the Google of China. Galaxy Digital, another very interesting one. I made my Galaxy Digital video when I was chatting with Mr. Mike Novogratz through Twitter, and he's a real gentleman and a scholar. I had to review my content before I put it live on the internet. Anyhow, you can see after that video, it went up quite dramatically from about 15 or 16. This was Canadian dollars. It's very important, not US dollars, so don't get confused. It rose very high, very quickly, and then sold off again. And then it went to the moon up to over 30 Canadian dollars. Right now, we're back at the $19 level. But you can see here as well, the RSI worked pretty well as a bear indicator here. This was a bit premature. It basically showed the bear flag right after I put my video together when it was on the rise. So again, as I always say, bear flags don't always work, but the buy flags certainly do. And there have been none. We only had one time where the RSI actually breached 30, and that was on the 27th of January back here. So I don't know where GLXY is going to go, but if it does get anywhere around the $17 level, the RSI should be down to about 33, 34, and that would be maybe an interesting time to have a look and take a position. Again, based on the Coinbase IPO, this stock is a screaming bargain. Illumina, I want to talk about a couple of things here. So again, it shows you the weakness of RSI and also the strength. But remember, for those of you who are watching Patreon Live, you would have seen my live post where I actually sold the $600 calls against my $300 long position. And because there was such extreme volatility with the stock literally spiking from 440 all the way up over 550 in a couple of hours, that brought about a huge amount of volatility and a huge premium on the calls. So I actually sold the $600 calls, and I'm still short them against my long $300 call position for January 2022. And I'm just waiting for these to kind of lose value over time. Now, the interesting point is here you can see some of these bull buys, again, faked out. But this one, when it went really deep down to an RSI about 22, 23, that was a good one to look at. And we're getting down close again. So I'm just monitoring this. But I want you to know the important lesson from this chart is when this RSI had a historical high of 85, 86, then you know it's completely overpurchased. And then you can think about entering a short position. All right, let's look at MicroStrategy. And then we're going to go a little bit deeper and do a couple of things that I like to do. Again, what does this chart tell you? You can see here, obviously, everybody saw MicroStrategy going to $1,300, massively overbought. The RSI was at 96. So when you see a 96 RSI or anything above 90, you know you're in a dangerous territory, and that cannot be sustained. And of course, it fell down. Now, I entered a second MicroStrategy trade here when it wicked down to 540. Again, we did that live. Now, what I like to always do, and I'm going to do a subsequent short video later on identifying arbitrage opportunities with my latest model around calculating the intrinsic value of MicroStrategy with real-time market cap, price, and Bitcoin price indicators to show you exactly where the price of MicroStrategy will go based on the price of Bitcoin. So stay tuned for that. But I want to show you one thing here of how I like to look at these. So with this one, you can see this was a bear flag right here. So it nailed that pretty quickly, but it didn't go very far. It went down and went back up to where the bear flag was without a change in the RSI. What is interesting to note here, though, is this RSI down at the bottom is 26 and the stock price is 620. So it is very much oversold. This has only happened today, March 24th. It happened 4th of March. It happened 23rd of Feb. And before that, it hasn't happened in a very long time. So we are in MicroStrategy bargain bin territory. Again, remember though, the price of MicroStrategy is a function of Bitcoin. So always bear that in mind. Now let's do something what I always like to do. I like to compare this to the price of Bitcoin to find out exactly where we are. What does this tell you? So over the last month, if you imagine a month ago, Bitcoin has gone up 14% and MicroStrategy has fallen 10%. Now, there were times when MicroStrategy was completely out of whack and it went far higher than Bitcoin, especially at the end of Feb timeframe. But at the same time, you can see now for the first time, MicroStrategy is not keeping par with Bitcoin, which again supports the thesis that MicroStrategy is completely oversold. So it's a simple tool to have in your toolbox just to compare and see how they map over time. And that would tell me that MicroStrategy is a buy. And I just want you to all to remember these numbers as well when you think about MicroStrategy. Again, I believe MicroStrategy has about a $1.2 billion intrinsic value. That's the value of the business before purchasing any Bitcoin. They purchased 91,326 Bitcoins at an average cost of $24,000 a Bitcoin. And there's some other good numbers back here. Cost of that is 2.2 billion. And now the value of their Bitcoin is over $5.5 billion. Add 5.5 plus 1.2, That's the value of your enterprise. Divide that by the number of shares, you should get your share price. And then you can identify if it's an arbitrage opportunity or not. And I'm going to be showcasing a model very shortly and sharing it as well online. So stay tuned for that. All right, now let's look at Tesla, because I know a lot of you love Tesla just like I do. Again, what do we see here? We can see that Tesla, bull flag, bull flag. The second one was beautiful. And again, remember I mentioned a few slides ago, I always like to wait for the second bull flag. And here we have a third one. So Tesla down at this area is kind of interesting. Now, let's compare, just for giggles, how this compares to MicroStrategy. For the first time in a month, MicroStrategy has been oversold in relation to Tesla. And the reason I mention this is because back a couple of weeks ago when I entered the trade in MicroStrategy, MicroStrategy on that wick down hit 540 and Tesla hit exactly the same bottom of 540. But this is the first time that actually MicroStrategy has sold off more than Tesla. So over the last month, Tesla's down 12.37% and MicroStrategy is down 20%. So again, another way of kind of looking at things and seeing how they compare. But here you can see Tesla is also looking like it's oversold. It didn't get back down to the level we were at before, but it is definitely not performing as bad as MicroStrategy. And I don't know if Tesla will ever go down to this level again of 540, but that was a crazy deal to be had. Now let's look at Invitae real quick. What's interesting about this chart, and you can all see it clear as day, bull flag, perfect buy. This was the bottom of that whole market mini correction. I was very interested when I saw the RSI initially break through $40 a share here. I entered into a trade at 38.5. Since then, it's gone down, added a tiny little bit more around the $33 level. And now we see Invitae completely oversold again. We have never seen an RSI down to the 13.5 level. Oh, no, all the time I've been analyzing Invitae. So very, very oversold. Now let's look at Shopify. Now we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit about divergence and how we map divergence. I'm going to draw a quick line. Now, this was the original trend of divergence, and this is basically called a bullish divergence. When the RSI trend is up on average and the overall stock trend is down, that means it's like a spring tightening up, ready to pounce. But you will see what happened right at the close of the market. The relative strength index tanked completely. And this we can kind of use and look at as an indicator. Tomorrow, if there's any weakness in Shopify, that might be an interesting time to look at it again, especially if it gets down into the 1,050, 1,060 level. Again, none of this is investment advice, just observations that I'm seeing in the marketplace. But this is an example of bullish divergence where the price action is going down and the relative strength index average is going up. Now, a more exciting example, it would be Cardano. And Cardano, now this is a more exciting example of some divergence. It's a little less dramatic, but you can see here the RSI has been going down, the overall trend, and the price action has been going up. But at the same time as well, you see the RSI going down here a lot. And it's actually fallen a lot since I put my initial slide together a few hours ago. So that's Cardano. And in conclusion, that would look like a bearish divergence. So let's go back to the slides. So first of all, pros and cons. We've gone through a lot of different examples. We've talking about how RSI works, how you can set up bear flags, bull flags, etc. But remember, always use trend lines. And remember, the most important thing is when we start bringing in moving averages and MACDs, which I'm going to do in a follow-on video for this, you'll see the real importance. And always remember, this is a lagging indicator, and don't ever just trade on RSI. It's dangerous, but it's also very powerful. Now, future IA Tuesday videos. In conclusion, things that we have in the pipeline. I'm going to talk about my secret trend line. I'm going to talk about RSI and MACD and how important that is, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, what's also going to start happening with all these videos is they're all beginning to blend together. So trend lines is critical, but how they work with RSI is even more critical. We talked about moving averages and support and resistance already. but I'm going to start building the case using this agenda as we go through. So at the very end, in approximately 14 weeks, you'll all be TA experts. So thank you as well. Thank you to all the Patreon members. You guys are awesome. Love the idea sharing and consulting on real-time trades all the time. It's brilliant. If you like this content, hit the like, subscribe, and bell so you're notified of when things are happening. Again, none of this is investment advice. And watch for the scammers, everybody. Thank you so much for your time today.